Good morning and welcome to Talking Baseball Australia Live. Baseball's best mate. We're on the air. Let's go. Let's roll it. We've got a big show. Put in to talk about a lot of hot baseball opinions with myself and Paul Morgan. Come your way in 3, 2, 1. Here we go, folks.
It's Talking Baseball Australia. It's baseball updates you'll really love. The MLB and ABL news you want. With Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn. It's baseball's best mate all year round. From the batter's box to the mound.
Oh, the music we love. We love our jam. You know what?
Yes.
I'm pretty proud of us, mate. I'm pretty proud of us. We've had that song for a number of years, and just I catch myself sort of like in my morning jog or workout. I'm kind of just talking. I'm loving it. I mean, I think your kiddos sing it. But good morning to you, mate. Paul Morgan, Dan Vaughn with you. How you doing?
Very well, mate. Very well. Actually, funny story about that. We got that made by a guy over in the States. I think it cost, he was a bit of a nobody at the time, and I think it cost maybe $40 or $50 to get that, or maybe $100 max to get that sort of whole song originally done. Now he charges well into the thousands to do similar things. So maybe either we made him famous, he made us famous. Who knows? Who knows, DV? It's actually quite funny because the radio network I work for in Australia, they had the same guy, and he was doing these summer jams. So all summer, like he was playing these songs. It was like he was playing the "It's This Summertime" on hit, blah blah blah. And my kids were in the car going, like, what? This is the same guy that sings the Talking Baseball song, and he was there. There he was across the hit network across in Australia. So it's one that's been around for a while, DV.
It's the way to get on the ground floor, and we did. We got on the ground floor many moons ago. See, I don't think people realize, by the way, here, baseball's best mate. We've been doing this. And maybe I don't brag about us enough because that's not really our style. We've been doing this since 2012 together in some form or fashion. And the show sort of began a year prior at Sport FM. We took it over in 12 and ran with it and done all these different things we're doing now. And I'm proud of that, I guess. I mean, I think.
And do you know what's funny, DV, is like, and we did it because we actually had no other option. But, when you think about when we first started, we were putting our content on YouTube, we were putting our content on LinkedIn or Twitter, or we were going live. As soon as Periscope came out, we were going live on Twitter.
Yeah.
As soon as Facebook, and like at the time, no one was really doing it because everyone was still doing network television and all these things. And all of a sudden, like, we look like these pioneers who did this stuff a long time ago, but it was because no one else really gave us a shot, so we had to do it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny too. And Stuart, appreciate it, mate. Appreciate you. Stuart's a good guy. And this came up this week, and I guess why, and I didn't know why I wanted to start with this before we get to the action. We're in the middle of postseason, but we had a guy that was, I believe it may have been Stuart. It may have been your site, your group that you moderate, ABL, one of the ABL fan sites. And he was talking about, is there anything out there podcast wise? So you got the Players podcast. There's a couple things out. ABL's got one here and there. But this guy was looking for more like information, game notes, transactions, injury updates, things of that nature. And I'm thinking, well, boy, this is right up our alley because we spent a lot of time on these game notes and odds and ends we throw on our Facebook page. And I jumped in. I don't always, and maybe I should champion us more, but I don't champion as much as I should. And I jumped on the guy was thanks a lot, and makes those, that we've been doing these little behind the scenes things. And so that's kind of where it came from. I thought, you know what? I got a lot of computer files of a lot of nonsense numbers. And when they said in the broadcast last night, somebody out there has got to have some stats, right? I'm thinking, well, raise our hand. We do. We have those every broadcast. But anyway, the show is Talking Baseball Australia Live. The Lewis and Clark of baseball. There you go. I like that. I like that, Bob. Good morning to you all. We're glad you're along here. Baseball's best mate. Okay, 26-6. It's just a one-time blip, right? Then 19 to what was it? 19 to
it was 19 to 4.
19-4. Suddenly,
so
that's a
55
trend.
runs.
So suddenly, that's a trend. I didn't think much about it after game one, but when I woke up this morning and started watching the replay, and by the time the middle of the innings, by the time the fourth inning, I was like, well, that game's over. I guess the first topic is, in case you missed it last night, Perth beat Adelaide 26, or yesterday morning, 26-6 in the opener, and then Melbourne took care of Canberra yesterday in the nightcap. Both games very similar. Melbourne might have set a playoff record and won for the fact that Perth already set all those playoff records 4 hours before. Is that a trend?
Well, the interesting, and Stuart he was at both games, so he'd be able to tell us more than we were. But a couple of people on Twitter, Matt Merrington, also Mark Doubleday as well, former Olympian as well. They both said Matt said that it was humid and the wind was blowing out. So normally the wind blows in a bit at that ballpark. It was blowing out and humid, so perfect hitting conditions. And Mark Doubleday as well, just saying that it's the one day of the year that 300 down the lines plays 250 instead of 400. So it's look, it's one of those. So what could be really interesting, and depending on what the weather conditions are today, if the breeze is blowing in a different direction, all of a sudden we might see like a 2-1 ball game and go, boy, these Heat and Aces pitches are pretty good. So.
And that's what we saw when these two teams met the one time they met, Melbourne and Perth, back 30 December. It was a 1-0 ball game. And they squeaked out, Aces squeaked out one run off Unsworth, and that was all they needed. And it was one of those classic. And I feel like, because I think I've seen postseason ball there, and I've called 3 years of baseball there. So probably 4, 8, 12 games I've called there over the years. I seem to recall that being a pretty balanced ballpark, that it was. The only trick usually was the infield played pretty quick because of the field turf. The power numbers were kind of equal to both. I really had no feeling it was a pitcher's park or hitter's park. It seemed to be a pretty even park. It sort of reminded me a little bit, now granted the wind shifting does help, but it kind of reminded me a little bit how the ballpark in the West and Perth plays, very even across the board. I think more of a pitcher's park, slightly maybe Melbourne's more even both sides. But that was just but I looked up those numbers. I'm going, holy smokes. I'm thinking those are kind of numbers you see in a Brisbane series or, at Brisbane or maybe Adelaide or the old park in Adelaide, when that's what you'd see. But anyway, I don't know I think that's my first knee jerk, but.
Well, 55 runs across the day. But DV, what, in your opinion, what does that tell us? Does that tell us more that, as we've suspected, Melbourne and Perth are the two clear better teams, or does that tell us that, or sort of, is there anything else glaring for you that pops out in that? I mean, is it the fact that, like, I think tonight we get a much better view of what's going to happen in the championship game with Perth and Melbourne? I mean, but is your take, are Perth and Melbourne clearly the better two teams?
Yeah, but for different reasons. I think when I think of Melbourne, first thing I think of is their offense. I mean, Delman Young's with a machine. I mean, just up and down their card. I mean, I was looking today. I mean, I'm thinking of some of their imports I'd forgotten were even there until I'm watching the game last night, and I haven't seen enough of them. Their offense is what jumps out at me in general.
Yeah.
I mean, was it Darryl George? What was it? 2 weeks ago had 1,000 RBIs in a game, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, they just have this deep lineup that just keeps coming at you. Reminds me a lot of a really good major league postseason lineup card. You know what it is. You get the postseason, everybody's good. And you look at. I remember I use insert whoever, but use the Dodgers for example, or whoever in the World Series. You get down the bottom of the card, you got guys that would probably be batting fourth and fifth, and an average team. They just keep coming at you with another stick, another tough out, and every out's tough. And that's what it reminded me of. First off, at least their offense is what stands out. The Heat thing to me, now granted, last night they gave up 6 runs. They used their veteran bullpen guys last night, Schmidt, Cam Lamb, and Tom Bailey, but they were way up. And it was just, let's get these innings in. In a one head-to-head matchup, it's the Heat pitching and the depth of, granted they've lost Nathan Wiles, but the depth of that staff with the Aces offense. And I think they're both really good for different reasons. I think and that's kind of where my take is on it. But it's an interesting matchup. Let's see here. Stewart says 55 runs, 57 in the previous 8 games at Mobile Ballpark. Today's a much cooler, overcast day. Expect scores to come down as well as a result. And you were what you were saying is right on there, mate. That expect that. Let's first off look at the Heat win last night. First off, I'm apologizing in advance. I don't have any. I'll pull the highlights up in a moment and get them up on the screen share, but I'm still working on the game notes because that, and I'll pull the curtain back because all the offense that happened, there were a lot of possible records to dig through. And unfortunately, that's a thing that takes some time. So I'm about 30 minutes behind. The game notes have already been up. They'll be up within 30 minutes of this show being over. But I can tell you that there's a lot to dissect from last night's game. 26 runs from the Heat, the 7 home runs, Suzuki's 8 driven in. That game was over in the 4th, that 11-run 4th, and that was pretty much all she wrote. But there were a lot of good numbers there, some record-setting numbers. First off, Heat had 7 home runs. That tied a franchise mark, and you can find those on our game notes as well. The RBI total was the most postseason RBI total since Ronnie Welty hit 5 in a series against, I believe it would have been against Adelaide in 2010. It's in the game notes. I'm going off memory here to tell you this. Extra base hits, it tied or actually set a season high mark in extra base hits for the club. All kinds of numbers in there. At what point last night did you figure that thing was done?
Well, I mean, it's actually funny because it's a separate issue altogether. The game on at 10 o'clock is a mess to start with. On a work day at 10 a.m. is just a mess to start with. So I didn't actually get to watch a lot of the game live, but I got the notifications, and I was sitting in a meeting, and my phone just kept going buzz, buzz, getting these. I'm going, what the hell is going on? So I pulled out my phone, and I'm just seeing, Heat 6-0, 8-1, or what it was, 10-1. It was at that time, and look, Adelaide is susceptible to that big inning. They had it like a couple of times, and it's the one thing I think Adelaide, when they get it right, are a really good team. But when they get it wrong, they're awful. And last night was a great example of them being awful. But when they get it right, they're a really, really good team. But that they were gone early, and as soon as they had to go into, as soon as Johnson came in and Mosel sort of really scuffled 17 runs in that one inning of work that he had. Either Tom Fitzgerald, who majorly scuffled in Perth as well, but again gave up those 16 runs as well. And look, it was a knockout punch early, which is it good for the game? Is it not good for the game? I don't know, but at least we've got some highlights TV to roll.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I had them up here. I'm kind of doing this a little bit of a backwards way here because usually I've got them actually cut up. But I was, again, this whole day today was just crazy. Let me just bring this down for a second.
I'll address as well. GM just saying, why didn't I call the game? Well, 2 reasons. One, no one asked me, and that was first and foremost. But second as well, there is a quarantine issue with Victoria at the moment, Western Australia. So if you're in Victoria, you do have to quarantine for 14 days on return, which would not be possible for me. But and unfortunately, I think all the teams actually interesting. DV, while you find what you're looking for, the Victoria's in a very interesting position right now because they've had another little spike in coronavirus, and they've got a little hot spot in the airport. I believe that the hotel at the airport right there in Melbourne, and Victoria is also on the verge of potentially another lockdown, which means tonight, in many ways, could possibly be whoever wins tonight could win the whole thing, DV. Yeah. Because there's a chance Sunday doesn't happen. There's a real chance that Sunday doesn't happen. If that cluster becomes a bit more of a mess, real chance Sunday doesn't happen.
Well, you see the highlights last night. I'm going to get. Can I save the whole question about your broadcasting till a bit later? Can I table that to the very end? I'm going to table that because I
Yes.
do have a hot baseball opinion about that. Uh, you and I, and here's the thing. I want to go. I want to pull this. This is our exchange text wise. I'm not going to joke about it, but this is our exchange. We Paul and I are exchanging text all week, and let me go back to 2 days ago. These were our just kind of thoughts on the series, and we knew that we the news of Robbie Glendenning being done. Which, by the way, Robbie, if you're watching, man, we're pulling for you, mate, and praying for you. We love that guy. He's such a big part of what the West does. The national team still plying his trade with the Pirates. It was devastating news to hear he's done for the year for at least 12 months. Robbie, you're going to come back fine and come back strong. I know you will. Losing Miles hurt as well. And then who am I missing here?
Ford Proctor.
Ford Proctor banged up a leg. So those two guys, they lost three big pieces there. Now, granted, everybody's a little thin. The Giants are thin. That was the first news. So you and I were already kind of figuring out, well, how the heck are they going to make this thing happen? How are they going to pull it out? Well, you and I, this was our exchange via text. And I don't know if this makes us good or we're trying or what, but here's what we basically said about this. Let me go back because, gosh, we got a lot of little odds and ends here. Okay, here was Paul's three. Now, granted, we haven't seen this yet. Can Waza close the door? Well, he hasn't pitched yet, so that's all good. He's still in reserve. Can Bojowski find form? Click. He did. Bojo had 4 RBIs yesterday. Big day for him. Bowie, offensive impact. His defense has been really good, is what Paul even said. He started to come on late when he got a chance. Tick mark right there. Bowser had a very good game as well. What was his final number in this final line? Where's the box here? He had 3 hits. He scored 2 runs.
3 for 7. Yep.
3 for 7. So those were tick marks. I threw out there Sasaki, and you actually, we both threw back and forth. This is our text. Sasaki would be positive production. And I said, yep, that would be a big, especially if he gets on base because he creates such damage on base. And I even said if he gets on base, he's good for a steal a second. Of course, it looks like he didn't have to even steal when he hit the ball in the ballpark. And then I mentioned, and we both mentioned, here we go, young WA guys stepping up was check mark number 2 or 3, and starting pitching number 4, and not having to use a lot of your bullpen was number 5. That was us back and forth 2 days ago. All those check marks happened for Perth, and Stewart brings up a great point. Lopez only worked the 4 innings. He's got a little something left for an inning or 2 on Sunday should you need him. It all worked out swimmingly. It couldn't have gone any better for Andy Kyle. And he even told me, Andy and I spoke via email back and forth for our stat reports before I send the stats. He was kind of piecing it together. I mean, he had to piece things together. Everything went swimmingly for the ball club yesterday.
Yeah, and that's what exactly happened. And we're yes, we know we have good insights on the Heat, and we watch them play a lot. And that needed to happen for them to have a good game. I thought that was a real danger game yesterday. Again, Adelaide are a little bit, you don't know which team you're getting with Adelaide. And as I say, I think if this lockdown doesn't happen in Victoria, and if we go all the way to Sunday, Victoria, I think Adelaide is still a chance to make the championship series because when they get it right, they get it really right. But anyway, but then there's Jared, a good Heat fan, just saying the lockdown imminent in Victoria, which it would be. I think if you get any more cases there, that you're probably going to have some time of a short snap down lockdown.
And Jared, as far as I understand, this is coming from Andy Kyle. Andy Kyle told me via email, and I'll double check before we go when I go to the game notes because Unsworth's in there. AK told us Lopez would start in the opener, which he did, and that he was going to piece together the lineup, which he did. Moving, Ramirez playing short, Jess playing second, Sammy Kelly playing third, which is his natural position. Although he's played more first this year, Sammy's a third baseman, always was until he hurt his elbow pitching. But Unsworth was scheduled to go tonight. He's due. He hadn't pitched in a while. He's due a really solid performance and a result. He's had the hardest luck of any guy in the league this year. The guy should be 6-0, and instead the team's 1-4 when he pitches. I mean, it's ridiculous, but they just haven't. They've had some bad luck. And then they were going to go and then they'd have Sulser, and then they'd have kind of a combo platter to get you through the final if they had to go that way. If not, if they're going straight to Sunday, they'd have Sulser for the Sunday finale with Lopez backing him up and Work Southpole in reserve. That's why yesterday was so big not to use any of those arms, Work, especially Gherkin, any of those guys in the back end, Ryder, any of them, any of those back end guys, they were all saved in reserve. Ivy, all those guys.
Boy, name totally escapes me. Young left-hander, boy,
Southey,
terrible.
Southey.
Yes,
Southey. Ethan asked, do you think Tommy John Torpedo's Glendenning's chance of making the MLB? I'm going to be honest with you on that. I'm worried about that only from a standpoint of you and I, if I was running a major league front office, I'd have a little more heart than that. But we've seen this year, for example, I know Jake Baker, the Perth product, was a victim of numbers. Jake gets a chance to pitch a rookie ball this year if they don't contract. In Major League Baseball, big league clubs, they don't operate on heart, unfortunately. They operate on numbers and what you've done for me lately. And if a guy's banged up, they get him fixed and let him go. That's how it works. I hate it. It's terrible. I don't like it at all. But I worry about that. I do. I've not heard anything negative one way or the other. It doesn't hurt his chance of the national team, and I don't think it hurts his chance of getting picked up by somebody else. It may slow his climb down, but I believe, and we've talked about this, and we know Robbie fairly well, he was on the cusp, slated for AAA, definitely AA, and slated because remember, there was no minor league season last year, so he had a really good opportunity in front of him. Now, the question is, what are the Pirates? And I don't know them personally. I don't know what kind of people they are. If they have a heart, they get him fixed and see what they got. But again, that's always a danger. You see this happen quite a bit. I had a really good conversation with Sam Street about this a couple of years ago. When Sam was pitching with the Pirates, he was a little dinged up as well when he came over to the at the time the T-Bones and pitched great for the T-Bones. Of course, Sam eventually was shut down and making his way back. We were just talking about this one day, how big league clubs, organizations, it's a numbers thing. And sometimes, I don't know about you, partner, does that worry you a little bit? I'm not trying to be a doomsday prophet, but that's the reality. It's a very good question.
No, I think it's a huge worry, and probably even and I know I wax enthusiastic about Mitch Neuenborn a lot. Of course, pitching now for the Adelaide Giants. I think someone should take a run on him for sure. But I mean, constantly, a lot of people keep telling me that like Neuenborn's had 2 Tommy Johns, and our team's going to look at that and go, well, here's Mitch Neuenborn in Adelaide, Australia, or here's Mike Smith in Kansas City. Like, we might as well go for Mike Smith in Kansas City, who they're kind of the same. But I think sometimes the disadvantage also of not being local or not being in the States also hurts you a little bit as well, because there's a little bit more to invest. But look, I hope nothing more than Robbie makes it back. I'm with you though, DV. I think even if the Pirates decide to go the heartless route, I'm relatively sure that somebody else will take a chance on him as well. So I wouldn't have thought it's all over. But
no, not at all. Yeah. Not at all. Being a position player helps.
Ethan actually makes a really good point. Ethan makes a really good point. Like, Ethan says a team like the Rays see something in him, and that's I think this is where these affiliations, the Phillies with Adelaide, the Rays with the Heat, and this is where these things could really start paying off.
Absolutely.
If these teams start going, if they've got coaches down here going, hey guys, look, I've spent a year with this guy, Robbie Glendenning, the Pirates have just left him, I reckon we should take a fly on him. And then they do. And that's where, again, the Phillies and the Heat with the Rays seem to be the strongest at it at the moment. But maybe it's a good opportunity for those affiliated teams.
Let me throw one more piece. This actually came up in the broadcast last night. I don't know if this is well known with Australian fans. Well, and it came up with Bowser, Jake Belly. It came up last night because he actually played one of his rookie league seasons in the Astros organization in the Dominican League. And you're thinking, well, what's an Australian doing playing in Dominican? Now, Robbie's in a different category to a degree, but you bring up a very good point. Now, Robbie was drafted, and that's a real feather in his cap, Ethan. That really helps because he was drafted. So that's a little different than a free agent internationally. International free agents, it costs them a little bit more money because you got to pay. Granted, you still got to pay for the flight for Robbie, but Robbie's considered a domestic product in major league circles because he was drafted out of Missouri, where Bowser, whoever comes over, is an international free agent. It figures against your international free agent budget, your signing budget. You've got all those budgetary concerns. And a lot of times those guys get stuck, and it shows you their priority. They get stuck in the Dominican Winter League or Summer League, not Winter League, Summer League. They get stuck where they're the only English-speaking, person playing in the Dominican League, and because they're international free agents, and they get treated a lot differently than a drafted player does who's domestic. And Robbie would count, even though he's Australian, being drafted is a big difference. And so, because that came up on the broadcast last night, well, why was Jake, playing in the Dominican? Well, the reason why, it's not uncommon to see international free agents, whether it be Dutch, Australian, whatever, from Canada even, playing in Puerto Rico, wherever, to the Caribbean. A lot of those Caribbean players wind up in the Dominican League. Thus, the Australians sometimes get sent there. And he's not the first one. There's been a number of them played there. So you see that the organization, big leagues are saying, well, you know what? We're doing away with this Dominican academy. So there's fewer jobs available too. That's a possibility too. But Robbie does have going for him, and he was a drafted domestic product, even though he is Australian. So that is also something that's a really good point in the mix. Morning, Matt. Good to see you. Let's see here. You brought a really good point. Okay. The final thoughts on the game last night. I think if you're Adelaide, everything went as bad as it could have gone. Well, from their perspective, where they sit.
Well, I mean, I think with Adelaide though, and this is where I guess this is the good part of this tournament, and by the way, I actually really think, and I'm with you, DV. I actually think this tournament style should stick around for a while in the future, maybe a bit more of an expanded model. But I mean, I guess once the Adelaide Giants go, 6-1 down or whatever, I think it was 6-1 down. They were 5-0 down as they headed to the third. They scored a run. Probably at that point, they know they're not going to win the ball game. So the decision then is, do you just play it out, and do you just kind of keep your arms fresh and just play it out? And if I'm Adelaide, the good news, if I'm an Adelaide Giants fan, although that was, I think I called it on Twitter, shambolic performance. It was because it was total shambles. But it was the good thing is that they've got a win against the Canberra Cavalry, which I think they can do, and then they've got to play either Perth or Melbourne, which I think they have two. The problem, I'd say, if I'm an Adelaide supporter, I'd have two problems. I think you've only got 2 bullets left in the chamber. I don't think you got 3. I don't think they can put together 3 good games. I think at best they can put together 2 good games, and they're going to have to time that well. I think tonight they're going to have to roll the dice and keep their good pitches up their sleeve, mate. Perhaps the newborns, etc. But they're in a tough spot now, DV, because what do they do tonight? Do they go all out to beat Canberra to take on Perth and Melbourne? Or do they try to leave a little in the tank and win it anyway? Because Canberra's a little, I mean, they had a terrible night as well last night, but they're you can make an argument for them. I still like Adelaide in this game, but
yes, I'm with you. But there's a traditional word that sportscasters use, the broadcasters, commentators, whatever you want to call us, scrappy. The word scrappy always comes in. And Canberra's scrappy. They're gritty and scrappy, and they're kind of nipping at your heels. And it's an age-old terminology, word that's been used, but they are that. They're that. And just I kind of glanced at their numbers today, and they don't do anything really lights out. Well, they run the bases fairly well. They're pretty good.
Yeah.
They're number 2 in the league, but they don't do anything just terrible. They're right across the board in every stat, head to head, and they've got to be sitting there in their clubhouse going, well, why not us? We've already won the wild card. We're going to, we got beat around. I mean, why not us over Adelaide? But both teams are in the same boat.
And they play good playoffs. The Cavs play very good playoff baseball as well. But, something, I was watching the game the other night, the Brisbane Cavs game, and that walk-off home run for Bosmo and Aroa. And I just thought to myself, that's the one thing about the Cavs. They never seem to be, except for last night. But even they jumped out to a 3-0 lead, top of the first. I thought that they're here to play, but they're never necessarily out of it, the Cavs. And I agree with you. I think you're spot on, DV. Scrappy is a great word for the Cavs, but boy, when I saw Boston deposit that ball, the exact same place when we were over there a couple of years ago, Cameron Lamb threw that far. You're on the broadcast. It was one of my favorite broadcasting moments of all time because you're on the broadcast and you're saying, "Now here's Bosmo and Aurora at bat, like something. If he knocks it out, he'll win. Whatever you do, don't throw this guy a fastball and you'll be fine." I think the first one sort of went whatever, and you're just like, "All right, Cameron Lamb's rolling. Just make sure you don't throw him fast. Next ball, fastball from Cameron Lamb." And that thing is just deposited into right field. And I just remember
I was beside myself because I knew, Boss is such a good hitter. He's a dead pull power guy, right? He knows, and you know this. And you weren't going to let he was the one bat in that ball game that could beat you with one swing that night. And you did not, and they weren't in a situation, there was 2 outs. You weren't in a situation where you had to be perfect. If you walk, in general, walks are bad, but there are actually good walks. That's one right there. You say, you know what? I'm going to put this guy on. I'm going to take my chances and see somebody else roll one over. I'm going to make somebody else beat me, not their best power guy. All he did was he did it. And you and I looked at each other like, what on earth are you doing? Why? What on earth are you trying to blow by a mid-90s fastball down the chute about a guy that's going to put it somewhere at the Capitol footsteps? Why do you do that? So yeah, it was a tough one. Let's see here. Sorry about this. Let me get this real quickly up here, and I'm going to get to the next game. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, just on this point, I would assume Frank Gailey will go tonight potentially. I think he worked the other night, but and he's one that I'd love to see Gailey versus Newborn. That'd be a great match.
I think that's what you're going to see. I know Newborn is he'd be the guy. There's no more tomorrow for either club. So you're in the situation, and it's something we talked about a while ago. It worked perfect for Andy Kyle, but if you're Adelaide, you've got to throw your best arm. And let's say the Heat would have lost last night. Well, Unsworth's going today no matter what. It didn't make any difference. But if your back's against the wall, your best arm's going to go out there because you can't get to Sunday or Saturday or whatever without getting that win first. And then you piece it together from there, and that's what's going to happen. But I would expect Newborn to go tonight.
Yeah, I think they have to go into that Newborn, into Luke Wilkins, into potentially Austin Ross for one, and Van Stencil to close the door. I think that if they're going to do it, that's how they're going to have to do it. I think they have to do it tonight. Then I think they have to probably roll a similar combination on Sunday if they get that far.
Yeah, late game was of course. I love these shots that courtesy of the ABL. I love those opening shots for really, really quality work by the broadcast crew. We'll get to the rest of the guest in a few minutes, but Canberra got off to a good start in this one, and I remember I already knew the outcome, right? I already knew the outcome when I started watching the game because it was already overnight here. But I wish I wouldn't have because it I knew, well, there's a home run, but they're going to get their tails kicked. But if I'm Canberra, I'm thinking, we just scored first in the road against the reigning Claxton Shield winners. I'm a Cavs fan. I'm jumping up and down, going crazy. Yeah, that was pretty much all they had to cheer about from there on.
Well, you're spot on. It all went south. Like a lot of hope early, and then it all went south pretty quickly. But the Aces, we've said it. We said it since we relaunched the show this season. The Aces are the team to beat. At the end of the day, it's the Aces' shield to lose. I think they have a real competitor in the Heat. I think that's. But fundamentally, they're still the best team in baseball, and they only got better. Even Giffen and Gope. we never really unpacked that much this season, what happened there. But Ngope just, he's another explosive sort of your bat and power, and Delman Young, if he gets going. I mean, and Connor, and even the guys, like what I love about, you have the Connor Willis. I mean, he had 3 RBIs last night. Delman Young as well. Blake Gailey and another 3 RBIs last night. Jake Romanski had a couple. I mean, this 1 through 9 hitter. I mean, there's not an easy out there. Willis on last night. You got Willis, George, Gailey, and Young. Thomas Shays, of course, is your Tom Shays, your man.
I told you that guy was. Yeah, I told y'all. I said it 12 weeks ago that guy was going to be legend in this league. Yeah, I mean,
they are very, and that's when you look through. I mean, when you do break down the Aces team, and I try to be a little like I think the Heat have like I look at the Aces DV though and go, they are a very difficult team to beat. Like when you look at that lineup is stacked. That lineup is good. I think they do have a real competitor in the Heat. I will say that. But boy, they're just such a good team, the Aces, and they're a good team. They're a good team to watch. I enjoy watching the Aces play as well, and can't wait for tonight, DV.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think tonight's classic offense for each. Although, don't sleep on the Aces pitching. They came in second ERA in the league. They were no slouch. Will give you this little. Let me give you this little piece of from the game notes. Let me pull these up here. I got these on my screen here. Interesting. I don't know if it means a lot, but I think it could. Let me pull these up here so I can look at them on the screen. So give me just talking baseball Australia live, baseball's best mate. Let's come on now. Come on. Computer's a little slow for some reason. I wonder why. The tail of the tape will be a little something interesting here if I can get to it. So it's going to take a moment to get there. So let's wait for it to load. There we go. Good gracious, folks. All right. Well, it's taking a little while here, so I'm going to have to put that down. But what I was going to tell you guys on these game notes here, pull this off too. What's going on here? But of course, these two teams, 1 and 2 pitching. Offensively, the Aces are the best offensive team in the league. Figures they played the most games. They should have the most power numbers. They played the most ball games, and they had the better average for the most part. Here's the interesting part, if I can get to it. Please come up. Please, there we go. Cooperate. It's going to cooperate for me. All right, here we go. This is the tail of the tape. This is what I really thought was interesting. 284 is the team average for the Aces. 263 for Perth. That's 1 and 3. Now, granted, the Sydney sample of so few games, they actually finished second, but that's really got to throw that out. Runs scored 155 or 56 led the league. 109 was third for Perth. Again, that actually is more of a true. Here's the big difference. 35, the power numbers, 35 versus 15. Home runs versus 15 home runs for Perth. Here's an very interesting number. They walked 96 times. That's the third most of the league. The Heat only drew 74 walks. Okay. So that's a big advantage, I think, getting on base. I think that's what really helps. And I think you get a lot more walks because you have such a deep lineup card and good hitters. You start nitpicking a little bit, and you start nibbling, and you start walking guys. But here's where the flip of the coin is. This is where I think the Heat have a real advantage. They've got to take advantage of this one weakness that the Aces have. In the pitching department, the ERA's 3.02 for Perth, lowest, 3.68, second lowest in the league for Melbourne. The walks, that's a huge difference. The Aces have walked 103 free passes this year. Now, granted, they played more innings, but they've also lapped the field in walks. 103 as a staff, that's the highest. The Heat have walked the fewest, but have played, 23 games? The Heat have only walked 34 batters, partner. 34 batters as a staff this year. And what is that? How many innings was that? 34 and drum roll, please. These game notes will tell you this, by the way. 34 walks as a staff in, 95, 140, 170 some odd innings. I did not realize that. And that's the one place right there that if the Heat are going to win this game, if the Aces start tossing out free passes, you've got to take advantage. You cannot let that slide. You know the Heat are going to throw strikes. The Heat's bugaboo is the defense. The defense has let them down. So but if you've got if their bugaboo is the walk, if they get a free pass, a leadoff man gets aboard, Sasaki gets aboard, let's say, he's got to be at second base, but bum to third, put the pressure on their defense, a pop fly gives you a run. You get to manufacture runs via their mistakes with the free passes. That to me is going to be a one thing to watch in this ball game because the Heat cannot match up toe for toe with them. Their offense is not a toe for toe matchup right now the way it's constructed. You're missing Robbie Glendening and you're missing Ford Proctor. Those two are huge losses toe for toe. But the way this team is designed with their speed factor, you can take advantage of your speed by getting on base with your walk. You have a better on base percentage. Put the pressure on the Aces pitching staff because you know the Heat are going to throw strikes. They may give up the bombs, they're going to throw strikes. And that to me is where the one little subtle in-game adjustment, in-game matchup that really favors the Heat that's not even seen on the head-to-head matchup.
Yeah, I think absolute spot-on breakdown of what's going on, DV, and you're right. And I think this is where the Heat's opportunity is in this game. And if you look at their lineup, they've got probably 50% of their lineup really, if they are drawing walks, can successfully steal second. I'm talking Sasaki, talking Jess Williams, talking Bajarski, I'm talking Abizi or Ramirez. Grant Witherspoon also no slouch on the base path either. So you are spot on. If they give them those free bags, at least 50%, if not more of that team can easily steal second base. They've got to start doing that. I think the Heat to win this game as well. I'll even throw in a little bit, DV. I think they need to. I don't think they can match. I don't think they can play a similar format as they did last night. I think they've got to stop thinking about swinging for the fences. They got to start. They got to start stealing, playing small ball because they're just got to manufacture. They know they don't give up a lot of runs. I mean, this is the good part. If you're from a Heat point of view, you know you don't necessarily give up a lot of runs. But as we talked about with Dylan Unsworth, you don't score a lot of runs when he pitches. So they've got to think about ways to score a little bit differently. Keep the chains moving, DV. It's what Tom Brady does.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And one little thing in that fourth inning last night, after Suzuki's home run that gave them the lead at that time 5-1, I think that was right. The next situation, the Heat got a couple aboard. Andy Kyle played the hit and run to perfection. TK doubled in the line on a hit and run, which would have been a double anyway, but it's scoring a pair of runs. Watch for that too, because again, you've got to take advantage of what they give you. And you know that they're not going to give you, they're going to hit Melbourne's going to hit a ball in the ballpark, if not maybe one or two. Yeah. But you want to keep that damage. If you keep those walks off base and you give them a solo shot, you tip your cap. But at the same time, you've got to match them run for run. And while you match them, making them make mistakes with the walks and playing the hit and run on the small ball, as you said, and playing the gap thing. And I think that puts the pressure on too. The speed factor does favor Perth, but this is going to be a delicious matchup because I think these two have different strengths. And I think that's going to be fun.
Yep. And I think from a Melbourne Aces point of view, where they'll be really, and we know the Heat errors are what kill them. I mean, and the Aces hit the ball hard. I think if the Aces can build the pressure on that Heat infield, particularly, I think you'll see some. I think you'll see some more errors from the Heat, and that is the one part of their game they've got to make sure is not is clean. Because if the wheels off go with those errors, they go 3 errors, then the Aces win easy. Circle back to Matt's point before, and also Michael's the women's showcase. So of course that got announced earlier in the week. So 2 teams, the Victoria Aces and the Brisbane Bandits, will play at Melbourne Ballpark. So they're doing it slightly differently. They're doing 2 3-inning shootouts. So the 2 teams play 2 3-inning shootouts. And if the teams are tied 1-1 after the 2 shootouts, I guess 1 game each, they'll play a tie-breaking 7th inning. If no team wins a tie-break, then a count-back advantage wins. So it's an interesting. It's 2 3-inning games, and then a 7th if they're tied. I guess. I mean, I would much prefer to see the women playing full 7-inning games. That's what I'd much prefer. But I suppose the way it's worded is it is a showcase. So a showcase tends to mean it's just a showcase. So in this case, look, I think there's a missed opportunity. Like I think there's been lots of missed opportunities this year, but I think this is another example of a missed opportunity. But it's
on my sheet, my notes here. Opportunities, something to talk about. Well, the show is Talking Baseball Australia Live. So I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to talk over you there. We'll get back to women's in a moment. Dan Vaughn, Paul Morgan with you. I'm with you, though. I didn't mean to step on your toes there, mate. It is a showcase. And, again, it's let's get these gals out there. Let's show them, because I really believe that this is something I've talked about before. As an American, Texan, whatever, I got to tell you, U.S. women's sport is way behind the 8-ball compared to Australia. Australia's done a phenomenal job of marketing all their women's sport. America's got a ways to go there. They're making progress, don't get me wrong. The NCAA basketball is an example. Women's NBA is a great example as well. They've tied themselves to a pro league. I'm excited about this. I think there's some really good ball players and competitive opportunities to really put two leagues together, a men's and women's league together, to really help grow our game, because it's going to only help our game in Australia. And I think this is a great opportunity. So there'll be a showcase this time, but looking forward to a point where you and I are chatting about, also the Grandma's Grand Finals coming up, and this is a pretty big matchup. And I think there's room for that, a lot of opportunity for that. And I'm excited about that, because, this is something we don't have this in North America per se. It's softball. And I love the fact we're seeing women's baseball. I love it.
No, I'm with you, DV. And again, I think, look, I get it it's great that it's on Fox Sports. It's great that it's on KO. It's ticking all the boxes there. Look, I just think that, I realize it's a showcase, but again, I realize also that in the hubs, there was more scheduled opportunities in the hubs as well. So, I'm not criticizing anyone for it. I just think that there's, potentially, it's a little like for the life of me, I could not figure out why if the games are being held in Melbourne, why, and maybe someone knows the reason, why wouldn't you be using Geelong as a field? Like, why would you not be using Geelong as a field? It's a great looking field, looks great on the broadcast. Could have played the Heat Adelaide game at night, so Heat fans and Adelaide fans could have watched the game at a reasonable time outside of work hours. But I suppose that's on that list of opportunities.
Let me give you an angle on that, because you and I had this conversation. This is the part that I hate being that guy, and I know we get a lot of criticism from certain factions across the ABL landscape that we sometimes tell it like it is. And we talk about opportunity. Cam Vale's talked about opportunity. You know Cam very well. And this is not, I'm using his name. It's not him, not knocking him. It's opportunity. A 10 a.m. start in the West. Okay, so you've got two ball fields within, how far is Geelong from the ballpark in Melbourne? What, an hour? 45 minutes? How far is that?
Maybe an hour.
Okay, so at worst case scenario, let's just say the 7 o'clock start at Melbourne Ballpark is scheduled, and you've got a 5 o'clock start local time in Geelong, and you've got the two competing venues, not competing, but for TV purposes. This happens all the time. I just watched 2 nights ago Texas Tech on Super Tuesday play West Virginia and lose, but they held off that game starting time until the Kentucky, and I believe it was Kentucky and I forget who they were playing, Tennessee were done. And when that game was done, they went and started it on the news channel like 2 minutes early, but they basically kind of slowed that second start down. If you know that, okay, let's say, for example, that the Heat game was going to go 3 hours and get a window of 3 hours, let's go, it's 3:15 in the time frame, you kind of push that second start time. Hey, first pitch will be at, because you got a TV window. You're going back-to-back TV games. That's the idea, right? You're going to showcase both ball games, and then as soon as that first game's over, you go right in the second when there's no time. You don't have to worry about the field getting ready. You go right in that broadcast. It happens all the time in the big leagues, happens all the time in sport around the world. I'm with you. And I hadn't even thought about that until just now, but that's a great, great point. if you're going to do this hub thing, which I like, I love this idea, that would have been a perfect situation because you've got two great ballparks within an hour's drive of each other in the same time zone, and you would have been, you've got the league's not very far. Anyway, I just, that's a tangent I hadn't thought about.
No, it's just it's interesting, DV, because I think that.
What? Sorry.
I think we'll go down to a point that I think needs to be made, and Simon makes the point.
He's got a great point.
For two broadcasts, but you're paying for two broadcasts anyway. So you're on you. I mean, you guess you're paying for two different equipment, but that's not
true. That is true.
It is true, but it's but again, like you would think if you're a local, and again, you would think if you're if you take a common sense approach, you would think that you could sell your broadcast a lot better at a nighttime slot in your local country. But hey, who am I to know anything about that? Secondly, this point is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. This whole notion that we're going to 100 million homes is ridiculous. You know as well as I know, DV, there was 400 people. There was 600 people watching the game on YouTube last night. The Heat game had 600 people watching it on YouTube. Now you're building a game for a US audience. You're presumably putting the YouTube game on for a US audience. You're getting 600 people watch the game. There's a mattress advertiser and a mask advertiser there that they're not even going to get one. And how these ads work, if you're pulling the curtain back, these ads work typically, you charge them on cost per thousand, so per 1,000 people watching them. And it's usually around about $20. So you're not even making $15 an ad break. You're making maybe $10 an ad break. So you're not making any money out of it by doing it at this time. So anyway, I will get off my high horse now, DV, because I hate the fact that I hate the fact that a postseason game was played at 10 o'clock in the morning in the West.
There's no other league in the world. The only place that I had this long conversation with my wife because I was incensed about this. The only place this happens, and it's been going on for how many years the NFL has been playing? Forever, since their TV contract back in the 60s. The only time you play a game at 10 a.m. local is in the Sunday NFL, but your fans know this. If you live in Seattle and the Seahawks are going across country to play the Eagles, that game most likely is going to be at 10 a.m. local time. Not always. I'm sorry. Noon. That's right. 10 a.m. local. Now, sometimes if they're really good, those games will be played at 1 o'clock local. But if your team, everybody knows this, and the same thing in Major League Baseball, but your schedule is out months in advance. So when the Dodgers go to Atlanta, that ball game comes on at 4 p.m. local. You all know that. Everybody knows this. But not at 10 a.m. local. Now, in the NFL, it comes up, but again, the NFL is a TV game, and people, that's the way it is. That's the only other place in the world that's like that. Now, granted, the Premier League, which is on the States, big-time NBC broadcast, are on Sundays and Saturday mornings, mid-morning. But it's on the normal time in the UK, the normal game time, whenever they play their game 6 hours prior, 7, 8 o'clock, whatever it is at night. I guess it's 7 o'clock here in the States. So it's, their 8 o'clock primetime window. I'm getting my time zones probably messed up here. The point is, you're not doing a 10 a.m. local broadcast for your team, your playoffs. And these are playoffs. Yeah. So and I understand the gist of it, but that game, 1 o'clock local, is great for Victoria, but terrible for Perth. Why is that game not 3, 4, 5? And again, yes, maybe my idea is a little bit out there, but at what point, and this is my question to the ABL, to you fans, to everybody, at what point are you going to sacrifice growing the game domestically, getting tails in the seats, eyeballs on the product, versus having international television, 100 million households? Well, first off, let me be honest with you. 5.7 million folks watched the Super Bowl on Sunday. There weren't 100 million watching the Super Bowl. That's false, flat out. It gets you into 100 million households. But, for example, that doesn't mean that 100 million folks are all tuned in on the couch. There are other things to watch besides it. And it's not like it's the ABL. If the NFL only draws 5 million on a given broadcast, That's a little misleading. So I'm here to tell you, just growing it from the outside, and I'm sure it's going to upset some folks in the apple cart here. And I apologize in advance, but I firmly believe this game must grow domestically in Australia. You must get folks in the ballpark. You must get kids there, families there, return customers, treat them to a great show, give them great value, have a great time. We've talked about this time and time again. But you're sacrificing, how many folks were at the opening game? 100?
Yeah.
It's not going to be boring.
Yep.
When you slap this thing together for TV so you get a U.S. broadcast, you sacrifice your domestic product. And to me, they can coexist, but you've got to sell that domestic product. You've got to sell it. You've got to. And if you're not, I mean, why don't just close the gates? Close the gates. Don't provide anybody out. I mean, I just don't understand that whole thinking. And I know that I'm probably alone on a besides you out here thinking that. But,
it's the two of us on the ledge, and that's it.
Stuart out to Graham Wilson driving out from Canberra trying to get to hey, drive safe. There's Graham.
That's what is that, about an 8-hour drive or something? But big drive. But
I bet that's a beautiful drive. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm off the subject there.
No, I will say this on it. I think there is so many. While my take is, I think it's great that the season's happened. I think when the dust settles, there is just so many blown opportunities time and time again that at some point someone's going to sit up and say, like, when is enough? Like why do we keep blowing these things time and time again? Like why? Like time and time again, DV, we keep blowing these opportunities. The game starts growing and it just doesn't grow as big as it could be. But grow it in Australia, like grow it big here. People, I go back to the story, like, you know, taking my kids to the last game with a couple of kids that have never watched the game in their life. They've both bought gloves now. They're both playing catch with their old man now. They're both hooked on the game now. It's just like, that's what you have to do, DV. Grow the game inside. I know there was some broadcast money in the US. I don't know. I know they're scrapping to keep the money together. I know they got paid some money from some networks over in the US, which is great. But I don't know. I come from the sort of I just think that, boy, it's 100 people at a postseason game. Is that helping or hindering the growth of the game? If you send out someone from Channel 7 or the Herald Sun or the Fox Sports or whatever, or one of these major media outlets, and they go out to that game yesterday, Perth versus Adelaide, they go, wow, it's a postseason. And they look around the stands, there's 100 people there. I mean, I'm not convinced, DV, that you're doing your game any favors. I don't think, and it's not one's fault. Everyone in Melbourne was at work. So
it's not their fault. I mean, those folks are at work that day. And I love to be on the air over there. I love it. It's great that I have family and friends in the States that get to hear me. But that's not the reason you and I are on the air. So people hear us in America. That's not the reason I do what I do. I do it because I love it. And our crusade, the reason I've been going back to Australia since 2012, I didn't just bolt. The reason we've grown this thing because we care. We want to grow the game. We believe this can be a top 5 sport. Now, granted, it'll never be number 1. I understand that. We believe it can be a top 5, 6 sport. We can be the top, we'll say, the very last of the top tier. And I get that. That's a great role for it. It's a lofty goal, but I believe in it. You've got a national team that's a top 10 team in the world, year in and year out. You've got a youth program, and you've got these under 20s and 18s and all that. These kids are badass. They're great. They're gold medal and silver medal winners. I mean, you've got a game that's domestic talent that this country can say, you bet, man, Australia is kicking ass. But instead, we're going to worry about getting more TV eyeballs from North America, which is great. Because I'm not here to tell you, there are hardcore baseball folks like me. We've got followers who watch. But by and large, right now, the North American baseball fan, he's watching the NBA or the NHL or the NFL or something else on Netflix. It's the way it is. You know how many Caribbean games I've watched this year? Zero, 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 zero. I love baseball, but I'm not going to sit around and spend all my winter time when I've got other things to do in the winter besides. And that's people don't. Again, growing this thing domestically. I'll give you a great example. Great example. There was an opportunity there. Now, granted, this is not the Aces' fault. They're busting their butts and doing what they can do, and I love what they do. But this is a situation where you throw this thing together at the last minute for TV broadcast. You got to sell tickets. If I'm the front office of the Aces, I'm like, you gave me a week to sell tickets? Gee, thanks. Give me 3 weeks at least. Give me 4 weeks. But I take out a stack of tickets this big. I walk out to every little kid in the corner and say, the school, and say, here's a ticket. Here's a ticket. Give the kids a ticket and get the field trip kids in there for the day game. If you're going to do this day-night thing, encourage some folks to come out. Do a U.S.-style field trip day to have some kiddos out with a $20 bill in their hand and buying some snacks and cheering and give some atmosphere. Yeah. But you look up on that U.S. crowd, and there were people joking on YouTube about going, oh, there's 2 people in the stands. That's opportunity. Yeah. And again, just
all up. And Stuart makes a great point as well. Like the 2 main talking points, Manny Ramirez had disappeared, and Keith Ward. Keith Ward, that was one of the great things we saw the other day. Keith Ward taking the first base and putting up. Need to focus on the talent, but you do need to focus on the talent. And this is where I come back all the time. Like there's a guy not so long ago from this city that I'm sitting in who signed a deal for $70 million over 3 years, which most AFL teams don't even have a payroll of $70 million. Actually, all AFL teams, I don't think, even go close to the same payroll. That one guy got paid, and we don't even. It's like we don't really. It's like baseball's here, and it's this game, and everything you say, Dan. We're a top 10 nation in the country. We've got all this young talent coming through. We've got these kids going to colleges in the US and earning themselves degrees and playing games over there and living a different life. We've got these guys in the major league systems. We've got a guy that's arguably one of the best bullpen pieces in the, if not the best bullpen piece in the whole entire baseball world at the moment. But it's frustrating. But
it's frustrating. And again, it's a tangent thing, and I'm not making any friends, but I ain't going anywhere. You and I ain't going anywhere. And I tweeted last night. We're not going anywhere.
And Ethan has a great. Ethan's just written that, and we've talked about this off the air. Why Luke Hughes is not the color guy tonight in that broadcast? And I don't know. Maybe he is, but why you wouldn't put Luke Hughes in the booth tonight, who played for both the Perth Heat and the Melbourne Aces, and in the big leagues, and can tell you the story about the journey of, and some of the best conversations I've had in the booth as well is with guys like Simon, with guys like Dean White, even, and Lockie Dale, guys who had to ride the bus in their different areas. But like why? Like I think that there's another. If that doesn't happen, it may well happen. But if Luke Hughes is not in the broadcast booth tonight, in my opinion, that's another big time missed opportunity, because there's a guy that can tell you a story about what it's like from Australia to go into the US and to go in the Twins organization, and then of course into Oakland, and they're back into the Jays and back into the barnstorming team, and then like back into Team Australia, what it was like playing for the Heat, what it was like playing for the Aces. I mean, this is the stuff that if I'm a US audience person, I think this is great. Yeah. I think listening to the difference between Liam Hendricks's journey and Clayton Kershaw's journey, which 2 different people, is fascinating, because Liam's come from a high school that probably just had an oval like everyone else's, while Kershaw's there in Texas probably got 10 ball diamonds in his neighborhood.
The ballpark that his high school plays in would be the second best ballpark in the Australian Baseball League, behind Perth. Yeah. I mean, it's that good of a ball. It's called Scotland Yard. I've done several stand-ups out there. Of course, his teammate growing up would have been Matt Stafford, the Lions quarterback. But see, I mean, again, he's coming from a power program. Chris Young, the new GM of the Rangers, same high school. I mean, these are factories that produce. It's a different way for Kershaw than it is for Liam. Liam came from, they're like going, baseball what? Huh? What? Baseball where? Yeah. And I can tell you, as a fan growing up, whenever I heard an Australian player, I'm like, oh, Australian? That's cool. That's a great thing. So Liam, and I don't know if you guys have seen this, Liam, and we tweeted it out, put it on Facebook too. his thing with the Chicago Fire Department, first responders, great. He and his wife doing that. These are things that are just phenomenal. It's off the subject, but I don't know if you guys saw that. But man,
I'll do it. Say one story though. We just to round out that broadcast. I had Warwick Sorpold on a broadcast. Well, I think it was for one of the showcases games. I asked him about. I thought it was such a great story. I was asking him about his experiences, and he told me his story at Fenway Park, and he got pulled out of the pen for the Tigers, and at Fenway Park they started playing Land Down Under. He comes out the pitch. He goes, he's got Land Down Under booming through Fenway Park, and he's going, well, what's going on? This is unreal. Like they're playing, and then he goes, 2 pitches in, the crowd's like, get off your Aussie, go back to Australia. He goes, all the boos started straight away. But again, like it's a great story here. That's why I hope Luke Hughes was in the booth tonight.
One of my favorite stories traveling with the Heat, and you and I have had a chance to do that, was one night we were flying from Brisbane back across the country after the series in Brisbane. And I believe it was the year, it would have been Andy's first year, and Andy Kyle's first year as a skipper. And long flight, Sunday night, we had plenty of time across the country. And we're all in that wide body, and we're kind of just having a little chat amongst ourselves in the middle. You have 3 players in front of us turned around, and I'm sitting there, and Luke's sitting to my left, and TK's behind him, and we're all in this kind of almost like a pub atmosphere on the plane, just having a chat about and telling stories. And these young guys, Alex Hall, for example, and Bojo, were leaning over and listening to Luke talk about his time in the minor leagues and some stories, like one of his times in Midland. And these are great stories. These kids were like just wide-eyed, soaking in. And TK was sharing his stories from his time in the minor leagues, and these stories, and of course big league stories. And those were just moments I cherish because I soak those in as a broadcaster. And you're right. The reason I think I like to think I'm okay, but I'm really, really, really good when I'm working with you and I'm working with Simon. Simon, a former player, you a guy who studies the game meticulously. You make me a better broadcaster. And it works the same way, makes our broadcast better. I think the Heat broadcast, when we're all 3 together, is as good as anything in the big leagues. And we educate, we inform, we have some laughs, and we also follow the action. And we're learning something when you watch our broadcast. The reason we do these dadgum game notes for 4 hours on a freaking Thursday when it's 27 degrees outside is because I want us to be good. And we're not even on the air doing. We're not even on the freaking air, and I'm doing these game notes. You and I are doing this. We're not even on the air. That's called commitment. That's called effort. And that's what I'm saying is that throwing in, I'll throw our broadcast against anybody in the world. And that's how good I think we are. And only because of the good people you use. You just can't mail it in. And I hate to, and it's just missed opportunity. I love when Gonzo's on in Brisbane. I love that. Because this is a guy, silver medalist. He knows what he's talking about. It's like when I hear Simon talk about the old school Heat days. Or we've had Ken McGee on. Ken was the first manager of the Heat. I love that. When Bennett's on with the broadcast, anybody. I mean, Dave Nielsen was on a couple years ago during the postseason. I love this stuff. Hearing from those guys makes the game better. That's. Can I finish on a positive though? Because I know it's going to sound like I'm just a terrible. I think this hub thing of the postseason.
The league doesn't promote us anyways.
Yeah, the league hates us anyway, right? So. Hey, we love the ABL, and we kind of yuck around like we're a couple of guys from the bush that don't know what's going on, but we do, and we're committed to this league. I love this hub idea for the postseason. I didn't like it at first, but I think there's a good opportunity here to really do something and float it around the league.
Yep.
Announce. Let's just say next year. Next year it's gonna be in Brisbane. Let's just say. Next year, grand final will be in Brisbane. Whether the Bandits make it or not, but it's going to be there. And then, of course, the incentive is hopefully the Bandits make it because you got 8 teams, let's say next year, a little harder, but you hope that you make it. And the next year, it's rotated around. Have the state governments do what they're doing in Victoria, but really give them a chance weeks and months in advance to promote this thing. Saying, now, granted, it's a pandemic year, but give them time to promote it and get this thing saying, hey, instead of a plane load of fans over from Perth to Brisbane or Canberra or wherever, let's create that atmosphere and give people a year in advance notice. Say, you know what, that's where the big game's going to be. I'm going. Let's turn it into an event.
And baseball is one of the few sports. I mean, there are, but baseball is one of the few sports that you really can do that whole carnival atmosphere and whatnot. I mean, you can make such a great carnival. And I actually think it's the one sport in Australia that could really work with that Super Bowl concept. If we know next year it's all up in Brisbane, there could be some in the week leading up to the series. There could be a whole baseball showcase. There could be a Legends of Australian Baseball lunch on the Thursday in Brisbane. There could be a whole lot of stuff. And I'm with you, DV. I think that the thinking differently stuff is exactly what's needed moving forward.
And let's just say that's COVID year, so that's all bets are off. But that doesn't excuse some of the odds and ends that we haven't, because these are problems. These are problems that have gone back. These go back. This is not just a 1 year deal. Some of these broadcast issues are going back. And for example, if you're going to play at 10 a.m., well, dadgummit, give me an audio option so I can hear the game when I'm making my deliveries, or I'm in the office between meetings, or whatever. Whatever. Don't make me have to go log in and watch. Give me that option. I mean, I can tell you that as a kid growing up, Major League Baseball playoffs were always in the daytime, which meant you were at school. And I remember many a time at school had a little radio, little old school Walkman with a little radio on it. It was a cheap, crappy one, but one we got. And I would go to my locker. I'd go get a drink of water or go to the restroom break. I'd go to my locker to check the scores of the Major League playoffs, plug my headphones in real quick, stick my head in my locker, listen to the score real quick, and then go back to class. This happened over and over again in my junior high and high school years. I did that because it was on I knew the game was on the radio. I knew where to go get it. I didn't have to fish around and sneak a TV into my classroom. Again, the audio option's not there. So thanks, Jared, by the way. Kind words there, by the way. Let's see here. Excellent point. I'm just hoping the super rich guys might take a chance. Ultimately, the NBL. Yeah, that's something probably we can talk around too. My old friend Candace, she knows this. Marketing machine. Yeah, appreciate it. Loves baseball. Love. Yeah, I do. Wow. Known her. Candace has one of the best stories, and I will not even say that, but Candace used to work. This is how cool she is. She used to work for former Governor Bill Clinton back when he was the governor of Arkansas. That's how switched on she is. She's a sharp one. Simon says, agree if I had the money of passion. Yeah, it's a passion. But that's the thing. It's a passion for all of us. Partner, I think the good news is, though, this format is workable. I like it. I think it's workable.
And with that potential lockdown tonight, looks like a juicy game. Dan, I've got to run for the school run, but before I go, I want to know who's winning tonight for you. Who's winning out of give me Adelaide, Canberra first. Who's going to win that ball game?
Adelaide, Canberra first. I am going to say that I think Adelaide squeaks it out. I think Adelaide has one of those, dang it, we didn't look that bad. We didn't look good yesterday, one of those kind of moments. And I just think they'll have us a little bit more in the tank. Watch my boy from Tech, by the way. I love watch the Red Raider.
Yeah, Grant Little in center field.
I see Adelaide comfortably tonight. And how about you?
I do too. I think Adelaide will win. I think they'll go. I think Mitch and Newman will get the start tonight. I think they'll get it done. So I'm going Adelaide as well. The big one though, DV, and it could decide who wins the whole thing if this lockdown happens in Victoria. Melbourne versus Perth tonight could very much go either way. You could very easily make an argument. Surely on. Well, actually, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what the bookmakers think anyway in this game. If I could quickly pull it up, what the odds on not that we're sponsored by Sportsbet, but maybe we should be, and they don't actually have it on just yet. So anyway, they don't have the odds. That's how they're thinking. So anyway, Melbourne versus Adelaide. Your thoughts?
Unsworth's 1-4, or the team's 1-4.
Sorry, not Melbourne versus Perth. Should I say?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. The Heat are 1-4 when Unsworth pitches. They're not going to go 1-5 when he pitches. It's just not going to happen. He was the best pitcher last year, numbers wise, top 5 this year. I just don't think that he's going to go to 1-5. I think they find a way, but I think it's going to be unconventional. I think it's going to be not what you saw last night. I think it's a nail biter. I think it's one of those, one of those situations. They're going to need 7 innings out of Unsworth to keep them within 3. A quality start for Unsworth, they get it done. That's what I'm saying tonight. And it ain't going to be easy because that lineup card, it'll be one of the masterful pitching performances going back maybe Virgil Vasquez circa 2011 type performance.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think you need a Virgil Vasquez, a Jake Frawley, a Mark Ekstrom-esque kind of performance. But I think the real danger for the Heat, I must say, is when you look at those Adelaide. I got my teams all wrong. But when you look at those Melbourne Aces, they can break out at any point in time. And Unsworth is occasionally susceptible to a big inning, is occasionally susceptible for an inning that gets away from him, and that could be what is the difference tonight. So that's the one part. But I look, if they can go, boy, I mean, look at Melbourne. Melbourne got so much talent though. It's so hard to back against Melbourne logically. But something tells me, DV, I just think the Heat go into this game with the different part to me is all these guys know, and they knew leaving Perth to go to Melbourne. They knew they had to quarantine for 14 days on the return home. They know they know they're going to have to come home to Perth and spin their wheels for 14 days at home. So I think the mentality was, let's just go and win this thing because I ain't going to come home and quarantine, sit around for 14 days if we lose this thing. So because of that, I think that extra mentality gets them over the line.
And I will give you the one little piece too. Having been to the ballpark there in Melbourne during postseason play, that atmosphere was phenomenal last year. If they get anything like that they had last year, now they didn't have that last night, but there's a home. They do have a great home crowd because it's so right there on top of you. If they get any kind of crowd tonight, that can be intimidating and can be really a momentum shifter. But don't know how that'll go. So should be fun though, mate. We'll wrap it up all next week. We'll know this time next week. Someone will be the Talking Baseball Australia.
This time next week.
Right? I'm just kidding.
Said that they'll be the champion, and it'll be our last show for a while as well. So we're looking forward to it. But DV, appreciate everyone popping in the comments as well, and look forward to seeing you again next week to wrap the season up, DV.
All right, mate. I'll let you go off to your work day, and there he goes, folks. Paul Morgan. Thanks, mate. Good job as always. The greatness of Paul Morgan. Oops, hold on just a second before I pull that up. I will say though, we'll give you the plus, a couple more little plus notes here before I shut things down. Love the hub. I love the video opens of the broadcast, and I thought the guys did great. I thought they did great as far as on the air work. That phenomenal work from Nick and Eric and Andrew and Nick in the late game as well. But I love those shots of Victoria. It was seeing those shots, especially the CBD, seeing down the big buildings in Melbourne. I'm thinking, boy, I was just there last year, and be at that ballpark last year, looking back at the suite level there below, and going, that was sitting right there this time last year. Did my heart pretty good. But hey, enjoy the broadcast tonight. Enjoy the game tonight. Our game notes will be up on our Facebook page within 40 minutes or so. As soon as I get them wrapped up, Talking Baseball Australia exclusive game notes for this epic Melbourne and Perth matchup tonight from Victoria. Again, thanks for joining us, everybody worldwide. Big thank you. Say it every time. Let's be better tomorrow than we were today. Be better fans of whoever we follow. Let's be better fans of our league. Let's show more empathy, more love. Let's just keep being good, man. Let's just keep doing what we can do and fight through this crazy-ass 2020-21. And, hey, it's our last regular season show. We'll be wrapping this whole thing up with a conversation this time next week. And, of course, you can follow us at Talking Baseball Australia on our Twitter and, of course, at Paul Morgan and Dan Vaughn and, of course, our Facebook page, all that and more. And we're always going to bring you that stuff. Final comments. Do you think having Legowski will help the league? Yes. That's a real good topic. We'll save that, Ethan, but that's a good conversation. The next thing is get some Kiwis in the big leagues, right? That's the next thing. And only beat last night with really top plays and coverage completely missed. So yeah, that's tough. And that's a whole other thing. That's part of our – we didn't even get to that part of it, and I don't want to I'm more about the time slot than anything else. But yes, there's some things to work on there, and we'll get to that, talking about that. I appreciate it, Ethan. Appreciate everybody for joining us. Much love to you guys. We'll see you guys next week on Talking Baseball Australia Live, Baseball's Best Mate. For Paul Morgan, I'm Dan Vaughn. Much love to you guys. See y'all then.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I ever get back for its root. Root for the puppy. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Let's get some runs!